They're mad and growing in numbers. More on how the Occupy Wall Street movement is picking up steam and who's unhappy about that. Capsized in shark and jellyfish infested waters. How a family survived in these waters for 20 hours after their boat capsized. Just 500 feet from completing 26.2 miles. A heartbreaking ending for one man. And Tiger Woods was definitely off his game, and a flying hot dog didn't help any. Your Independent News Network starts right now. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to INN News. I'm Mike Mickle. In case there was any doubt, protesters on Wall Street have proven they're in it for the long haul. The Occupy Wall Street movement is now in its fourth week. Protesters are camped out at New York City Park. They have taken on political corruption and the nation's financial system. A new Occupy-inspired protest popped up in front of the White House yesterday, where one man was arrested for throwing a shoe that hit a Secret Service agent. The protest has drawn some praise from Democrats and criticism from Republicans.
It seems to me that their anger should be directed at the White House because Barack Obama's policies have put us in one of the worst tailspins economically that we have.
The people know that he is not responsible for our financial dilemma, and they know that the financial community is responsible.
Protests are now taking part in more than 200 U.S. cities as that movement gains more support. The Occupy Wall Street protesters are gaining more high-profile support as well. Reverend Al Sharpton broadcasted his nationally syndicated radio show from a New York park. Organizers of the demonstration are also calling today Kids Speak Out Day. New Zealand's Navy has been called in to help clean up an oil spill in the country's pristine Bay of Plenty. A container ship ran aground Wednesday. The ship is no longer leaking, but officials are worried it could begin to break up. The ship was carrying 500,000 gallons of heavy fuel. A spate of killings at a port on the Mekong River has interrupted cargo trade between China and Thailand. At least 12 sailors were murdered in what police say may have been a hijacking attempt by drug traffickers. A number of other cargo crews are now refusing to leave their ports, fearing for their safety. The investigations continue. Over the past 8 years, more than 50,000 Colombian guerrillas have laid down their weapons. Now the government is hoping many of those former guerrillas will pick up some tools and learn a trade. This program teaches the former fighters how to make shoes. Many of the former guerrillas never received a basic education, and most have never held a real job. The program emphasizes working with others. It even has psychologists on hand to help the former guerrillas deal with any psychological wounds. And that's your Global News Now. Well, many of you may spend your Friday waiting in line. We have that and more as we get back to business. A new study indicates job losses are likely to have long-term impacts on workers' earning potential. The Brookings Institute found 75% of workers who lost their jobs during a time of high unemployment were still earning less than they were before their job loss. If you're hoping to get an iPhone 4S when it's released on Friday, don't count on ordering one online. The first round of pre-orders for the new Apple phone sold out on the first day of availability last Friday. That's looking at shipping estimates. AT&T says it sold more than 200,000 phones in the first 12 hours. Its most successful iPhone launch ever. You are still able to order the iPhone online, but it's now estimated to take 1 to 2 weeks for delivery. You could also try your luck waiting in line at an Apple store or cell phone retailer when the phone hits shelves on Friday. More than 2,000 people turned out to get a look at Boeing's new 787 Sunday. The Dreamliner was on public display at Seattle's Museum of Flight's parking lot. Japan's All Nippon Airways was the first airline to take delivery of a 787 a couple of weeks ago. And that's your Back to Business for today. An incredible story of survival. 7 people, including a 4-year-old girl, treaded water for 20 hours before being rescued by the Coast Guard. The family's boat sank off the Florida Keys on Saturday. An 80-year-old woman drowned before she could be saved. Rescuers say no one was wearing life jackets. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission is trying to determine what caused that boat to sink. A small fire shut down this ride at Walt Disney World yesterday. This is the Astro Orbiter, which is part of the Tomorrowland area of the Magic Kingdom. Disney officials say no one was on the ride at the time of the shutdown. Part of the theme park was temporarily closed, though. Officials believe a hot light bulb sparked that fire. Also in Florida, after days of rain, people near Orlando are dealing with flooding. An overflowing creek put some homes underwater in part of St. Cloud. A pump is getting water out of the street, but authorities have closed many roads because of the high water. Dangerous animals like alligators and water moccasins are seeking dry land. More than 8 inches of rain fell in St. Cloud since Saturday. Driving just got a whole lot easier for Iowans heading to Kansas City. Interstate 29 between Pacific Junction, Iowa and Rockport, Missouri opened over the weekend. Missouri River flooding had closed that stretch of road since June. And while the flooding on the Missouri River is over, for many flood victims, the battle is just beginning. Maureen Wirtz from our Omaha affiliate KPTM takes us into one Iowa home that's still not livable because of mold.
When you see mold on the surface of drywall in your house, it's 3 times worse on the backside of the drywall.
Now this area around me may look fine, but just inches below where I stand sits the water table that seeped into this house for over 3 months. And the 2 feet of water in the basement was the perfect spot for mold to grow at a rapid pace.
Typically, we don't want to see mold spore counts higher than 200. This kind of a level, the spore counts are over 30,000, 30,600 to be precise.
An extremely high spore count can be disastrous for your health. One specific type of mold, carcinogenic, is extremely dangerous, sometimes even fatal.
And when you're exposed to them, after a certain period of time, they can even cause cardiac arrest.
Rosie Halsholm also had major mold damage. After clearing it out, she says she feels like a new person when she wakes up in the morning.
I stood up, and for the first time in almost, well, I can't tell you how long, didn't have to grab a hold of furniture to make my way to the bathroom.
Price and his team will spend a week cleaning up this house using hospital-grade fungicide, and he has a word of warning for anyone who tries to clean mold damage themselves.
Well, bleach actually acts as a food source for mold, and it's like pouring gasoline on a fire.
A fire that could take months and thousands of dollars to put out. Reporting for INN News, I'm Maureen Wirtz.
A heartbreaking story of a marathoner just 500 feet from the finish. He collapsed and died. 35-year-old William Kevinus was a firefighter from North Carolina. Race officials believe he died from cardiac arrest. This last death at the Chicago Marathon happened back in 2007. Tiger Woods was dealing with a different kind of hazard on the course yesterday. A fan ducked under the ropes surrounding the 7th green and threw a hot dog at the golfer during the final round of the Fries.com Open in California. The hot dog didn't come close to hitting Tiger, but it did distract him, causing him to double bogey the hole. The fan was arrested, is charged with disturbing the peace. The incident was actually caught on camera, but the PGA chose not to air that video. Well, something great is happening in Texas that hasn't happened in a long while. And picture perfect, the Northeast is proudly showing its colors when it's best to see these. And beautiful paintings by artists who are unable to hold a paintbrush. These stories and more still ahead on INN. And we want to remind you INN News is on Facebook. You can also find us on Twitter at INN News Network. And we're on YouTube. We're reaching out to you so you can reach out to us. INN News, we'll be right back.